Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome, newcomers, members, and friends, to our worship service at Central Unitarian Church on May 5th, the first Sunday in May 2024. For some, May 5th is Cinco de Mayo, a day celebrating Mexican culture and heritage. Here at CUC, we have chosen this day to ponder mental health awareness and advances, not only to recognize mental health as a reality, but to acknowledge that we have a role to play in its acceptance. My name is Susan Springstead. My husband and I came to CUC in 1969. Trailing one sweet, bossy little girl and 3 rambunctious little boys. Mm-hmm. We were welcomed at that time and given space and grace to grow in the community. And although our children often found it hard to define Unitarian Universalism, they absorbed the values of the faith, as did we. They all attended sexuality and affirmation classes, struggling with their questions and their credos. and the UU ministers performed their weddings. Today, their lives are shaped by the lessons of justice, acceptance, and inclusion that they learned here. Who could ask for a more generous gift than that from this inclusive community where all ages and all identities and all spiritual beliefs are given voice? Every CUC class, every interaction offers members and friends an opportunity to find inspiration or hope or renewal. If you listen carefully, perhaps you will experience one of these moments today. If you are visiting here in person, we'd like you to meet one of our welcome hosts afterwards, Sandy Woodson and Carol Hoffman. They're in the congregation over here, and they were the ones handing out programs as you came in. If you are visiting us online, please sign our guest book using the link in the chat at the bottom of your screen. We are always grateful to those who have worked together to create a service. Our seemingly indefatigable minister, the Reverend Andrée Cornelia Mall, our dedicated music director, Matt Anderson, and choir conductor, Renee Galvan, who, along with me, joins in the music provided by all our choir members. A grateful thanks to our ever-present Zoom technicians, Phil Sosinsky and John Freund. And our beautiful flowers are provided this morning by new member Rudy Yeager on this anniversary of his wife's passing. Rudy himself is in Scotland spreading her ashes. After our service, there will be coffee, conversation, and connection for everyone in this same space. But now, as I remind you of upcoming activities before we enter into worship, we ask those of you here in the room to silence electronic devices, and those online to ready a candle or chalice to light as we light ours here in Westwood. I have 4 reminders. The CUC stewardship team, this is not a reminder, this is an announcement, is proud to announce that we have reached 98% of our stewardship goal, totaling $137,164 for our upcoming congregational year. We, CUC, are joining other congregations to support a family relocating to New Jersey with the assistance of the Pink Haven Coalition. Pink Haven supports families fleeing states with anti-trans laws. This fundraising effort will contribute to the family's temporary housing for a month and their ability to secure more permanent housing. Along with the Women's Alliance and several of our members who have already donated, you may also donate. Details in this week's newsletter explain how you can do this via pinkhaven.org or by check. And if you have any question, Rev. Andrée is glad to answer. Family Promise Hike for Hope fundraiser takes place this afternoon in Ridgewood. 13 CUC members are signed on for this team. Others may join. They are welcome. We exceeded our goal of raising $500 for this effort, thanks to all who have contributed to our continued support of Family Promise and their mission to prevent homelessness among working families. And last, the UUA General Assembly 2024 is June 20th to the 23rd. It is entirely virtual this year. You can join CUC's leaders and General Assembly delegates for a discussion today after the service at noon. There, they will review items and issues up for vote in June, particularly a final version of proposed amendments to the UUA bylaws, which include a new articulation of our shared values. Your input and feedback during this meeting will help shape and guide our delegates in voting. Thank you. And now, turn and greet each other before our service begins.
There's one more announcement.
Oh, yes, and Anthony, would you come up? Spring Fling, I almost forgot.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
When's it going to be spring? Before I forget, if you need the sign-up sheet, you can reach out to the Spring Fling Committee with Robin. Here's the sheet here. It's on the table over there. All right, so I'm going to just talk really, really quickly about the importance of what I'm advocating for as PBP, Patricia's Bus Passes. She had this really cool story that she told me. She had lost something really valuable to herself, and she put out a reward for it. Ends up, short story, it was behind something, and she found it, and she was praying to St. Anthony before she found it, right? And no one claimed the money, so she's like, who's St. Anthony? And she thought of me. I'm not trying to give you props or anything, but we got this nice little sum of money. For absolutely no reason. So what I thought to do is, what is the best way to use this money? Now, a lot of us are doing lots of good work out there, and we have lots of good causes like feeding people, shelter. But one thing that's always missing, especially with the populations I work with, which is often homeless, neurodivergent, people just really struggling, is how to get to these things that we advocate for. How do you get to the place, the office to do food stamps? How do you get to your doctor's appointment? How do you get to there? Especially if you're homeless in a shelter. They have you stay there, and then when in the morning you have to leave and figure out stuff on your own. So if you're homeless, generally you don't have money, and you don't have extra money for things like bus passes or Ubers. And not only the homeless, we also have lots of our youth are trying to live, but they don't have the necessary skills. So what they end up doing is Uber. So they're working minimum wage job, taking Uber to go to work, and then using up all their money. So the best thing I can come up with is our PBP, Patricia's Bus Passes, which is we offer it to anyone that is within our community that is in need of this. We give them a bus pass for 3 zones, intrastate, so they can't go to New York, it's just within New Jersey, and they can go pretty much anywhere in New Jersey within 3 zones. You can get off and then do another 3 zones, so you can go anywhere. And that's what I'm asking you today, is to think during Spring Fling, think of PBB. You can help so many people very quickly, very easily. Thank you.
Now let us move more deeply into our worship service. Let us all take a moment, turn to those next to you, and give them a hello on this rainy morning.
We're doing it.
CUC is proud to proclaim itself as a stigma-free zone. Stigma-free is a statewide initiative that aims to reduce the stigma associated with mental illness through education and awareness. And as part of this work, each year during the month of May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month, CUC offers a service broadly on the theme of mental health. And today's service is going to focus specifically on the topic of neurodiversity. Now, if you're not familiar with that word, one of the many ways that human beings experience diversity is through our brain function. And experiences and behaviors which in the past have been labeled as abnormal or problematic, such as dyslexia, ADHD, and autism spectrum disorder, are now better understood to be part of our natural human diversity, or human neurodiversity. Rather than problems to be solved, there are more experiences to be understood and experiences that we can all play a part in supporting. We can better understand this particular type of diversity, and we can understand ways that we can work together to allow each of us to flourish in the various ways that we move through this world. So our service in this way is about embracing all of us who come together on Sunday and all of us who we interact with on a day-to-day basis throughout our week. And in that spirit, I offer these opening words from the Reverend Tess Baumberger. It is titled, "Less Beautiful Without You." This place would be less beautiful without you, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, Jew, Hindu, humanist, and earth-centered too. This place would be less beautiful without you, your heart honed by hardship, grief, illness, seeking solace and comfort here among us. This place would be less beautiful without you, filled with joy and gratitude, seeking celebration of life's bounty. This place would be less beautiful without you, curious, inquisitive, asking questions, seeking transformations emerging from within. This place would be less beautiful without you, striving to resist a world that tells us we are so much less than we can truly be. This place would be beautiful without each of us, born here in this morning to seek heaven's fire in each other's souls, our own flames rising to meet. And I invite you to rise in body or spirit for opening hymn, which I believe Renee is going to lead us through and around.
So we'll sing it all together first, and then this side of the room will be number 1, and then this side we'll come in at where it says number 2 from the beginning of each round. So here we go. Building bridges between our divisions, and building bridges between our divisions, with all of our voices and all of our visions, with all of our voices and sweet harmony of one, building bridges between our divisions, building bridges between our divisions, with all of our voices and all of our visions, with all of our voices and all of our visions, when we can make such sweet harmonies, building bridges between our divisions, with all of our voices and all of our visions, with all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Excellent. And the beautiful thing about something like this, it works out We could have done maybe four divisions, but that was lovely, thank you.
Thank you, Renee. And I'm going to invite Helen Brenner from Pastoral Care Team to read our chalice lighting words.
Good morning. I'm Helen Brenner, as you just said, from your pastoral care team. And I'd like if you join me in saying the chalice lighting words. We light this chalice to remind us of our dreams, to nourish our heart, mind, and spirit, to work toward a better world for all, to embrace the whole of our human experience, to honor our past and our gifts of the present, to create a community where each of us may find healing, transformation, and hope.
I'm going to share a story this morning called The Pear Tree. There once was a man and he had 4 sons. And he wanted to teach them about the dangers of judging things so rapidly before seeing all aspects of a situation. So he decided to send each one of those 4 sons on a journey, one after another, to view and observe a distant pear tree. Each son traveled in a different season, the first in winter, the second in spring, the third in summer, and the fourth in fall. At the end of the year, he brought his children together and asked them about what they had seen and what they had observed. The son who had traveled in the wintertime described a gnarled, twisted, and barren tree that stood stark and ugly against the land. The son, who went in the spring, disagreed completely. He commented that the tree seemed full of hope and promise, with many green buds along its branches. The third son, who traveled in the summer, described something different yet again. The pear tree he had seen was covered with beautiful blossoms that looked and they smelled divine. And finally, the fourth son, who made the journey in the fall, he was more elated than any of his brothers because he described a tree that was laden with sweet and delicious pears, better than any he had ever tasted in his entire life. And after each one of these sons had spoken, the father said, they were actually all correct because each one of them had only seen one season in the pear tree's life. And he reminded his sons that it is foolish and impossible to make wise and fair judgments in this manner. He further explained the essence of something, whether it's a tree or a fellow human being, can only be measured as a whole at the end of a year, having seen it through its development and its fullness. To make a negative judgment in winter, for example, is to miss the promise of spring, the beauty of summer, and the deliciousness of fall. To make these negative judgments is something that we can easily do for anything, he reminded them. And his message was to refuse to judge yourself, your life, or other people's lives based on a single aspect of their being, especially one that you might not understand.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Get closer.
Okay, try that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm Karen Clements. I'm here this morning at Andrée's request to read a poem called Masking. The following poem, written by Hannah McGregor, was posted by the author on the website hellopoetry.org and tagged neurodiversity. This poem is titled Masking. The National Autistic Society in the UK defines masking as follows. Masking is a strategy used by some autistic people, consciously or unconsciously, to appear non-autistic. While this strategy can help them get by at school, work, and in social situations, it can have a devastating impact on mental health, sense of self, and access to an autism diagnosis. Here's the poem, Masking by Hannah McGregor. From a young age, I tried to fit in, observing those around me from where I was sitting, taking in their smiles, jokes, and body language, learning this social code which they used to their advantage. My manual is not the same, written entirely for me, but I have not read it properly. Navigating a world where I copy to survive, forever wondering, if I sustain this, will I learn to thrive? I have become a result of continuous masking. In social situations, I feel like I'm drowning, living in a world which does not feel for me. All I can do is write about my isolation in poetry. Thank you.
Our congregation would not exist without each and every one of you. A congregation isn't an institution that's built by bricks or by wood, by a building. It's an institution that exists because of the people that are connected to us. Each one of us contributing what we can to make our community whole, to make our community thrive. And one of the contributions which is important to keeping our congregation going are financial contributions. Each of us giving what we can so that we can afford our building, the lights, our rental, our staff, our programming. And so we pause every Sunday for a moment to offer the sharing and to celebrate the sharing, whether you are able to give today or not. It is all part of the beautiful community that we call congregations. And now, our offering will be gratefully received.
Wisdom and truth will guide your daily path's journey through all travel. Oh, stay your soul and lead my heart its song. Oh, stay your hand, the journey may be long. And when we part and sorrow can't be straight, remember when and let your heart be saved. Oh, mia soul temperat, absens in remota, amore fideliter, fidem mea noto. Oh, stay your soul and lead my heart its song. Oh, stay your hand, the journey may be long. And when we part and sorrow can't be swayed, remember when, and let your heart be saved. Be saved.
Please join me in saying our dedication words. We dedicate these gifts in the service of our mission to welcome all into a home of spiritual diversity that challenges us to become our best selves, to minister to one another in love, and to serve the greater community. I now invite Andrée forward to share another reading with us. Is Andrée out there? There we are.
As many of you, put it down more.
Step up. Beautiful.
Many of you, oh, there we go. Many of you know that our son Todd was killed in the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attack on the World Trade Center when he was 25 years old. And those of you who have been around long enough may remember that when Todd was 9 years old, he started having panic attacks. He was helped by a wonderful child psychiatrist, and as my husband always said, he never looked back. When we lost Todd, our family established the Toddawida Children's Foundation as a legacy for Todd. We have provided financial support and raised awareness about anxiety and depression in children for over 22 years. And every year we give a scholarship at Todd's high school, recognizing a student who has become a stronger and more caring person through overcoming an obstacle or persevering through adversity, as Todd did. And I'd like to read to you the essay of last year's scholarship recipient. Merriam-Webster defines bravery as the quality or state of having or showing mental or moral strength to face danger, fear, or difficulty. Being an individual with autism, I must be brave every day and push through obstacles that are simple tasks for my peers. People talking loudly in groups at lunch tables, the hustle and bustle of the high school hallways when classes change, the bright posters in highly decorated classrooms, and trying to play standard sports in a generalized gym class are just a few examples of how I have to be brave by trying to control my impulses and seem as normal as possible. To try to understand how this would feel, think of having a rock in your shoe all day. You can tolerate it, but at the end of the day, you can't wait to rip that shoe off and feel comfortable. A lot of people couldn't tolerate the pebble, but I have to continually battle this every day. Although I am living with a diversity, I try to use positive techniques that I have learned over the years to overcome these difficult situations. I use methods such as slowing down my breathing, counting silently in my head, trying to focus on only one stimuli at a time, and overall just trying to the best of my ability to try to fit into the typical world. I also know that I don't have to be on my own, that I have my family who loves and supports me. My bravery doesn't come as a single task of slaying a dragon or winning a battle. It comes in the form of living with autism. And this young man is now a student at Fairleigh Dickinson University in their Compass Autism program.
Thank you, Andrea. Now we enter into a time of meditation, sharing together the joys and sorrows of this community. This is something we do together each week as a way of caring for each other. I have a number of joys and sorrows, which I will share out loud. And I also offer anybody who's online, if you have a joy or sorrow that you would like to share, to type it now into chat, and I will read those out loud to the group. I'll then turn back to the room and offer for you to speak out loud the name of anybody else you're holding in your heart today. We'll enter into a moment of silence, followed by a moment of prayer. But let us enter into that space where we can properly give and receive this type of sharing of the heart. Let us breathe in together a breath of life and breathe out a breath of peace as we prepare to share today the joys and sorrows for this community for Sunday, May 5th, 2024. Spirit of life, your presence is great, your facets are many. The universe is so vast that our understanding remains only a very, very small part of the whole. From the great expanse beyond the stars, to the immense depth of our dark oceans, to the intricate workings of our own minds. Each day is an opportunity to learn more, to be surprised, to be delighted by this living world of which we are all a part, by each other and by ourselves. May we hold on to this sense of wonder and beauty for what we do, because when we do forget about this sense of wonder and beauty, that is the only way we could possibly harm even the smallest part of this creation. So may we be reminded of all the graces in our lives, each and every day. Blessed be, and amen.
Amen.
I invite you to remain seated for our next hymn.
Our third reading this morning is called Answers Toward Questions Other Than What is Autism by Adam Walland. The following poem can be found on the Poetry Society of America website and is composed by a non-speaking writer, Adam. This poem uses the word tick, T-I-C, and ticking. The National Institute of Health defines tics as sudden, rapid, recurrent, non-rhythmic movements and vocalizations. The poem by Adam. Ticking through the world is like touching it. The inward rotation of a spiral is like the amazing, tall idea always thinking around and out. Inside the world is the question of easy touch. Good thought moves like fluid water, and the way of water is raining really into the seething good cracks of wanting thought. Mostly, I sometimes tick through the world, and that is the way I feel. I feel the world too much, so open, bothersome work is to feel inside, pandering to language. The work is to feel the world that is touching me.
The comedian Hannah Gatsby, in her recent memoir, and in many of her stand-up routines, has spoken and written about her experience being diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder as an adult. To her, it was like discovering a key puzzle about her own life. She writes, "Ever since I can remember, my thoughts have been plagued by a sense that I was a little out of whack, as if belonging was beyond me. To give this feeling a story, it's as if I'm an alien who's been abandoned on Earth and left to muddle my way through life without a reason, a mission, or any memory of home." Without a full understanding of herself through her autism diagnosis, she struggled with many aspects of her life, especially school. "A lot of noise all at once," she writes. "Even if they're exclusively pleasant sounds, will always feel like an assault. So the relentless cacophony of high school was constantly and unbearably overwhelming. And don't get me started on the smell of it. Body sprays competed with hair sprays, which competed with the always over-deployed deodorants that still somehow managed to lose the war against the toxic bouquet of teenage body odor. Thank God I was a smoker. I might have perished otherwise. The other hurdle my high school threw up at me was homework. I'm not morally opposed to extracurricular curricula. I just didn't have time for it. As in primary school, I needed my evenings to catch up on the things my brain had been unable to take on board during the day, not to mention recover from the sheer exhaustion of trying to subtly navigate a sea of hypercritical teens for hours on end. On top of that, the closer I got to being an adult and the further away from being a baby, the chores I was expected to get done at home increased. And these extra burdens, as reasonable as they were, led to my brain shutting down more and more. And without my brain, learning became impossible. Now, these are typical experiences for those with autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, and also other types of neurodiversity. And they echo the experiences of the student whose essay Andrea shared with us. Unfortunately, for too long, children and adults struggling to function in environments that don't work for them based on how their brains are wired have been considered problematic or difficult. They become problems to be solved or they are dismissed. And there are many of us here who are familiar with these experiences. We have a number of neurodiverse adults among us. Many of us have neurodiverse children or loved ones. And for me, that includes a number of my beloveds, including my son. Neurodiversity, as we're using here in this service, is an umbrella term. And it encompasses a wide range of experiences and behaviors. I named a few before: dyslexia, ADHD, and most commonly autism spectrum disorder. There are others as well. And we now better understand all of these are part of the natural diversity of human brain function. And like I've said a couple times, rather than problems to be solved, they're more experiences to be understood and to work with those individuals. The image for today's service is, if you've seen it, I'm going to ask Phil to put this back up. This is a infinity symbol it's a rainbow ribbon, and it represents neurodiversity in general. It's often used to represent autism spectrum disorder. You'll see it around if you recognize it. I've seen it on many bumper stickers. There's even a car in my family that has it. And this colorful ribbon represents the diversity of human experiences, challenges, and gifts to be found across individuals with neurodiversity. And because we've learned so much about neurodiversity just in the last couple decades, there are many myths about it that have led to the stigma around it. In addition to the idea that neurodiverse experiences are problems to be solved, we have the false images which have been provided to us by the broader culture. Probably the most famous example is the movie Rain Man. There are many, many, many false ideas that are wrapped into this movie. One of them is by just portraying one experience and saying this is autism, you're giving the assumption that all people with autism have high support needs, that they are nonverbal, or that they're very limited in verbal communication and social skills. And while definitely there are individuals with autism who have those high needs, autism is a spectrum, and it affects communication, learning, and behavior, and that mix can totally differ by individual to individual. But we have these myths around there, and Hannah Gabsey talks about when she revealed her autism diagnosis, she had all these people coming to her and go, you don't really have autism. Because she didn't seem like somebody to that person's awareness, somebody who had autism. And so she's had to fight to say, yes, I do. Because as with any person, those with neurodiversity all have different strengths and challenges. Rain Man and depictions like it lead people to think another thing, and that is that everybody with autism is a genius. And this myth also poses a real danger of inappropriately projecting expectations onto others or ourselves. As with any human experiences, we must never rely on one depiction, especially a Hollywood depiction, to define our understanding of that experience. And that's why for today's service, we have pulled in all these different voices. In addition to Gatsby's experiences that I'm sharing here today, we heard a poem of lament on masking, where the poet writes, navigating a world where I copy to survive, forever wondering if I sustain this, will I learn to thrive? I've become a result of continuous masking. In social situations, I feel like I'm drowning. And a non-verbal poet struggles to give language to their experiences, which Susan read. I feel a world too much, so open. Bothersome work is to feel inside, pandering to language. The work is to feel the world, that is touching me? Or how about the student essayist from Andrée? I have to be brave every day by trying to control my impulses and seem as normal as possible, to try to understand how this would feel. Think of having a rock in your shoe all day long. You can tolerate it, but at the end of the day, you can't wait to rip off that shoe and feel comfortable. A lot of people couldn't tolerate that pebble, but I have had to continually battle this every day. And one of the dangers of this type of service, of sharing these voices which offer only a glimpse of these individuals, is that, like the pear tree in the story that I shared, we can form a judgment on a single aspect of a person's life. And a person is not their gifts alone. A person is not their struggles alone. A person is not their diagnosis alone. While all of these things may shape their lives, we must never forget that each person is so much more than we can glimpse in a quote, in a poem, or in a story. And the latest articulation of our UU values, as put forth by the Article 2 Study Commission, names pluralism as one of our values. In defining that, it proclaims that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology, and it asks us to covenant together, to learn from one another in a free, responsible search for truth and meaning. It calls on us to embrace our differences and commonalities with love, with curiosity, and with respect. And if we bring these neurodivergent voices from today into our spiritual practice around this value of pluralism, we have much that we can learn from each other. First, we must remember that there is no one way to be neurodiverse, whether that means a person is on the autism spectrum or something else. Second, we must recognize that our understanding of neurodiversity is evolving, and much of what we've learned have been in the past few decades, which means that there are many people who have been or are continuing to struggle alone and don't even realize why. Hannah Gadsby writes about this as having been diagnosed in her 30s. I wish more than anything that I'd known about my ASD when I was a kid, she writes, just so I would have learned to look after my own distress instead of assuming my pain was normal and deserved. There was no one to blame, but I still grieve for the quality of life I lost because I didn't have this key piece of my human puzzle. But until someone unlocks the riddle of time travel, little me will flail and fail their way through the world for 30-odd years. This means when we are in a community together, like a congregation, we can't assume that all of our needs are going to be met in the same way. And we can't assume that we can all be in community the same way and at the same time. Big social gatherings, for example, are a nightmare for many of our neurodivergent beloveds. And that includes sharing meals together, where one might have to navigate the complexity of numerous social situations, as well as eating, which can bring its own host of challenges. Now, many individuals with neurodiversity learn to manage anxiety, which can be toxic to their mental health. And one of the best ways for them to do this is through managing their environments and avoiding or at least reducing their exposure to distressing situations. It's about finding ways to feel safe and calm to circumvent that anxiety from taking over, right? We've all experienced that, where our anxiety becomes overwhelming and you behave in ways that you might not necessarily be able to control, right? And that's what a lot of neurodivergent individuals are doing. So I just give you an example. I have a friend of mine who refers to themselves as neurospicy, which is a phrase I've been hearing more and more people use, which is great. And they've learned that certain foods support or hinder their mental health, so they're very careful with their diet. They're also extremely sensitive to sound. So you often hear things I can't, or things that seem at a low volume to me seem extremely loud volume to her. So going out to restaurants is something we like to do together. It's not out of the question, but it has its challenges. So for a long time, people in her life have dismissed these things as her own behavioral challenges instead of supporting her in navigating these challenges and navigating her needs. So when the two of us go out to eat, we first find a place that has food that will work for her, which is common when you're going out with two people. But there's another important step. We'll then go inside. And the first question is, will this place work for you? And even if the sound of the atmosphere seems calm to me, it might not be the case for my friend. So if the answer is no, we go somewhere else. Or if the weather's nice, we might order takeout at that place and go eat outside somewhere. Sometimes we actually need to switch partway through because an environment that seemed okay at first quickly turns out not to be. A band strikes up, music starts playing, the place gets really crowded and the volume comes up. And so we have to switch and be flexible. And this flexibility can take time and work, but it's a key on how we spend time together and how we support each other. And without this dance together, I'm not being supportive of my friend, and I potentially play into cycles of the past where my friend has consistently been led to believe that she was the problem in these situations. And we can practice this dance as a congregation as well. We can offer flexibility in our ways of being together. This may include flexible seating or space to comfortably move around in our new worship space, as we're trying to include in the design for a new building. It may mean recognizing that online worship is kind of the best and most comfortable place for some people. It may mean shifting ways that we do worship to meet more people's needs. It may mean offering more ways to engage in our community without attending worship, which in many congregations is a key focal point. But it will certainly mean, out of all this stuff, what it will certainly mean is engaging in the dance of being together in different ways with all of our different needs. And I've learned to do this dance, and I'm still learning to do this dance through my beloveds with neurodiversity, including my son. I've learned not to assume what people want or need. I'm constantly reminded that people can't always easily articulate what they want or need. My job as a dance partner is to observe, maybe ask a question, and listen. And if someone's behavior becomes problematic or troublesome, I try to, instead of getting frustrated, I try to ask, what is it that they are trying to communicate? What is it that this person is trying to communicate? So we're all in a dance together, no matter how our brains function, no matter how we think, no matter what walk of life we come together, we're all learning to be in a dance together. There's an individual named Chris Martin who describes himself as a neurodivergent award-winning poet, a celebrated educator who teaches nonverbal children and adults in the spectrum to find their voices through poetry. The poem that Susan read was actually from one of his students. And he has a book called May Tomorrow Be Awake on Poetry, Autism, and Our Neurodiverse Future. And through that book, he offers various insights into this dance that I'm describing. And one of the insights he offers is very simple on the surface. It's look for ways to be together. And this insight, he says this title actually comes from one of his students, Amelia Bell, who's a non-speaking autistic writer. And she wrote a poem about belonging, which sparked Martin to ask these questions. How do we find belonging together? How do we recognize our differences, our otherness, and find that connecting across those differences holds us together in a way that is healing and transformative and may even point us toward justice? And he believes that we can ask these questions. How do we find belonging together We can ask it in many different ways through our interactions with each other. And what I'm referring to here is as a dance. Our ability to find connections despite our neurological differences, Martin writes, is the most important practice in which we can collectively engage. By doing so, we will undoubtedly bring forth new insights that will lead to a richer life. Now, as I read these words from Martin, I can't help but think of the words from Hannah Gadsby that I opened with, where she writes, "Ever since I can remember, my thoughts have been plagued by a sense that I was a little out of whack, as if belonging was beyond me." To leave people struggling with a sense of belonging, wondering why they can't fit, feeds the overwhelming sense of disconnection and loneliness that many of us are feeling in this modern world. It confines an individual to an island of their own, telling them that they are there because it is where they belong, and it's their own fault. We can offer a different way. We can offer a dance. And so may we work together towards our neurodiverse future. So may we take up this dance and collectively create that much needed sense of belonging. May it be so. And may we sing of this dance. There's a lovely hymn in our hymnal we don't get to sing often enough, called "Let It Be a Dance." And that is what we're going to do this morning. I invite you to do whatever your body needs to do, whether you want to rise, sit, move around as we do this hymn. And Renee will lead us through.
Oh, number 311, yes. It's probably there, yes. 311.
Let it be a dance with you. May I have this dance with you. Through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the words, and fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need. To reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you. Through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Everybody turn and spin. Let your body learn to bend. And like the willow with the wind. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. A child is born, the old must die. A time for joy, a time to cry. Take it as it passes by. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you. Through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Morning star comes out at night. Without the darkness there's no light. If nothing's wrong then nothing's right. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter, bear the pain. And run we go again. Let it be a dance.
And now let's renew our promise to each other with the closing words. Please join me. We extinguish this callous flame, but not our promise to each other, to act with grace, to hold each other in love, to serve this community and our world. The promise of the heart serves as a reminder of how we live together. May it bring joy to our collective lives.
Each one of us contains multitudes. Even people that we think we know well, there may be things inside themselves that they're learning. There may be things that we learn about them. So much more for somebody that is new in their lives, or somebody whose experiences are so vastly different than ours. And one way to connect with those people is to say we are all the same, we are all human beings. But we can go deeper. We can go, yes, we are all human beings, and wow, how amazing it is that we all have these different ways that we experience the world. And when we can bring that together, we can enrich our own lives, and we can enrich all the lives of those around us. And that is one of the ways that we practice community. Let us carry that practice forth as we part today. Blessed be. Amen. Thank you, Matt, Renee, and the CUC choir. Thank you to all the readers that we had today. Susan is the worship associate, Karen Clements, and Andrew Ueda, and also to Helen Brender. Where did Helen go for providing the chalice? Many of those individuals are part of our pastoral care team who is hosting coffee hour, so please do join us for coffee hour. Thank you for John and Phil for doing tech. I will say that for those that are staying for the General Assembly discussion, because worship ran late, we'll start that discussion at like 10 after noon, so we give chance for people to do some coffee hour time together. So thank you all. Blessings to each of you.
Very nice, folks.